Okay. So as we just talked about a little bit, guys, we are going to be doing a training today on how to correctly enter somebody into a program. So how do you enroll them? So in our scenario today, we are going to pretend that I have been told to go ahead and enroll our test client into the HUD Permanent Supportive Housing Program at IRBA, and they are going to start looking for housing. Okay, so that's kind of our scenario, just a little bit of background on that. So as you guys know, when you are in the HMIS, entering data as is very, very important. That basically tells the system which project to connect the information to. So that is important. Make sure that you always check to do that. In our scenario today, we are going to pretend that we are enrolling a client in a new project. So we're going to make sure that we're entering data as that permanent supportive housing project that we just talked about, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and find that project here. Okay. And then when you find your project, you're going to click this plus sign next to it. And then now I'm going to pull up the client. I've already looked up their client ID, so I'm going to go ahead and just enter that in right now. It'll let me do it. Yep, it's our test client. So after you have pulled up the client, this screen will pop up and it'll say backdate mode. So if you have to put in data for a previous day in the past, you could change this to that. For today, we're going to go ahead and just let it stay the same because this client is starting to look for housing in this program as of today. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, I don't want to click. Okay. Set that as our new backdate. It's always a good practice too when you first pull up a client just to double check their information, make sure that everything is entered in, that you don't have any missing areas there that need filled in. So on this client, we can see that if there are any notes, documents, any of those things that would show up down here, so you can kind of review that if you need to. But then for this incident, we're actually going to go ahead, we're going to go up to this entry exit tab right here. Okay. So you will put your point or click on that. And then what this is right here is all of the entries and exits that this client has throughout the entire time that it's been in this data system, right? So you may see information on there from CEFS or IRBA or the Haven or any of those projects are also included in our same implementation. So they would show up on this screen, okay? So in this case, we're actually going to add a new entry. So I'm going to click here at the bottom where it says add entry exit. All right, and so for our test client, he actually has several people included in his household, okay? So when you're entering somebody in a project, the entire household will go into the project, right? Because if they enter housing, they're all going to live in that same house, correct? So to do that, I actually want to click this box up here on the left-hand side, and that will click all of the household members, okay? You'll see right here that your provider name is listed right there. That's great. Type is always going to be HUD. For everybody on this call, the only type that we ever use for entries or exits is always HUD. So you'll click that. Project start date, they are enrolling in the project today. They are going to begin looking for housing. So I'm going to click Save and Continue. And then you guys will be familiar with this. This is our HUD assessment screen. So if you need some additional guidance on that too, feel free to look back at the HUD assessment video that's on the COC website as well. But this will need to be completed. Every form, like every spot on here will need to be completed for all the adult household members, okay? It's very important that you go through and double check just to make sure that none of this information has changed. Specifically information starting right about here where it says housing move-in date, right? So this is an old move-in date for this client. They are not currently in housing in this scenario, right? They're starting to look for housing. So we would need to clear out that housing date because we don't want to pull an old date. Let's say right now that they are currently staying in their vehicle and they've been doing that for a week or more, and their homelessness started on March 1st. And then where do they stay or how many times have they been homeless? Let's say 3, and they've been on the streets for a total of 6 months. Okay. Then go ahead and double check all of your income, non-cash benefits, all of those things. You guys know how to do that, but you can also look back at that other video if you need to. And then at the end of here, you're actually going to click Save and Exit, okay? And then what you'll see right here, it pulls up that new entry exit right there, the same date that we have for today. and then you're good to go. It's a pretty simple process, right? So the next part of that would be adding the move-in date, which there's also a video on that on the COC website, so feel free to reference that as well. But when you do that, you'll just need to make sure, so say maybe that they found housing 5 days later, go ahead, on that date, make sure that your backdate mode says says the same date that you're on, and you can go ahead and add an interim to add that move-in date. Okay. You guys can look at that other video for that. But the one thing I will mention on move-in dates and project entries and all those things, if a client is has a project entry date after their housing date, the system will not recognize that. So what I mean by that is, say the client actually found housing or was actually housed on like the 15th, and you try and put in here that they were housed on the 15th, but you're putting it on the 20th, the system will not recognize that and will show them as unhoused still. So it's really important to make sure that the project start date is not before they enter housing. Okay. And then when you would, so say we're going to exit a client now, right? So just for today, we will show you on this one too. So if a client has finished a program, okay, then you would click over here to this pencil right under exit data, or exit date, I'm sorry. And that will pull up this screen. Again, the entire family is going to be leaving the project, so I'm going to go ahead and click that up here, and it will make sure all of those family members are included. The exit date will be on there. The reason for leaving, so it gives you several different options. Please just kind of go through and pick the one that makes the most sense for the client situation. So we'll say in this case that the client has completed the program. And you can skip other. For destination, we will, it also gives you several different options. These options are split by different types too. So you'll notice the first section here is kind of like those who don't know, they don't want to answer, etc. The next one is homeless situations. Then you've got institutional situations, that could be jail, hospital, etc. Other, and then permanent housing situations and temporary housing situations, okay? Ideally, we would love people to exit to permanent housing situations, but that's not always the case, as you guys know. So we'll say with this client that they are exiting and they're going to be staying at their rental, and they're not going to have any other housing subsidy. So rental by client with no ongoing housing subsidy. And then you would click Save and Continue. And then this will basically pop up a shortened version of that HUD assessment we just viewed, okay? So double check and make sure. One thing that all of our funding sources are really big on is seeing if there's been any income change from program start to program finish. So it's very, very important that we double check and see if their income has increased. If it has, make sure that we get that entered correctly. Same thing with non-cash and all the other things on here. But the income especially is very important when somebody exits, because a lot of times people have increased their income and we need to make sure we're capturing that. Okay. So after you've reviewed all of that, you would go down here to these questions at the bottom. And there's just 4 questions that you can complete. Housing assessment at exit. So they actually moved into a new housing unit. They do not have a subsidy. So they don't have any subsidy, so we'll leave that blank. And then for this client, let's say that they are not enrolled in school at this point. And then they have they've graduated from high school already. Okay. And then after you've entered those questions, you're going to click Save and Exit. Right. And then you'll see right there, it'll show your project start date, project exit date. That's how you know they've been successfully exited out of the program. Okay. One note I will add. So say for instance that I need to delete this entry, I messed something up and I need to redo it, okay? You can actually do that if you go over here and click this trash can over here. As long as you are entered into the project, EDAing as the project, you can go ahead and delete this, okay? If I delete the entry for the adult, the head of household, it actually does not delete it for all of the other household members. You have to kind of go in there and do that separately. So say for instance, we're going to go ahead and delete that. I don't want that. I messed that entry up. I'm going to delete it. Now I need to go into all these other household members. I need to delete their entries out too, one by one. There is not a way in the system to kind of like group those together to delete them all at one time. So you would just go through to each household member, make sure that you go ahead and delete each one. If your agency is seeing a lot of head of household errors, typically when I see those, it's because of this. Maybe there's a household that was put in the wrong program, or they were deleted out of a program, and not every household member was deleted out at the same time. Okay. All right. Any questions on that? Okay, great. I'm actually going to stop the